today. But I am Katie. I am the Client Communications Director with CPAC. So if anybody reaches out to the inbox and has any questions about any programs or any resources that we have to help you start your practice ownership journey or even career coaching in general, as a PA or NP or healthcare provider, you're most likely getting into contact with me. So I'm excited to put a face for you guys today, by being here. And we are joined by Catherine Werner, who is a PA practice owner extraordinaire, owning her own telepsych practice, and has really honed in on what the exact blueprint would be in order to start your own practice in a very streamlined and efficient way. So, Catherine, welcome to you, and we will go over just a little presentation here today, that will be recorded again for all who registered. And then we'll open up for just a couple questions here. So this should be a fairly short, just nice little lunch introduction here, to our team and some of practice ownership resources and thoughts, for those looking to enter practice ownership in 2026. So I'll let you take it away, Catherine.
Awesome. So yeah, we're just going to get into it. At CPAC, our mission is really to make practice ownership simple, achievable, and sustainable for clinicians. We work mostly with PAs because our team is PAs, but we also have options available for nurse practitioners, physicians, anybody who's interested in owning a medical clinic. We can definitely help with that. So our team, our founder is Casey D'Amato. She started and sold numerous businesses over the years, and is also a Durham PA. So we've definitely got big ownership vision covered. We've got Katie, who you've already met, who does community relations. So any contact with our organization normally goes through Katie first, and then she kind of filters you to who it needs to get to or helps you decide what services that we can offer that might be best suited for you. Danielle Spatholt is a great PA for salary and contract negotiation. So for our PAs who are and nurse practitioners who are still working for someone else, that maybe neither need help with that or maybe want to make a career pivot, get better work-life balance, Danielle's got that covered. And then I'm in charge of practice ownership. I own a telepsychiatry practice, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but that's my role with CPAC. So why practice ownership? Why do clinicians think about owning their own practice? There's really a lot of there's probably as many different reasons as there are people who show up to these, events and are thinking about practice ownership. But we definitely see some themes. A lot of people want more control over how you practice and who you serve. When you work for somebody else, they have direction over a lot of what you do. We also see people that want income that's not capped by salary. When you work for somebody else, they're always going to take some of that, and rightfully so. But if you want that income that can grow beyond what you yourself can do as an employee of another practice, maybe you want to really increase your own hourly rate, or maybe you want to build out a team that can really increase your income potential. My big thing was a schedule. I needed a schedule that was going to work for my actual life. When I started the practice in 2019, my husband was active duty military and deployed or traveling and having crazy schedules. And then I had two toddlers at home with no, local support. So working for someone else and having to keep a regular like 9 to 5 office hours was just not feasible. It was not going to work. So I created my own practice where I could set the hours whenever I wanted them to be. A lot of people talk about wanting to provide care that reflects your values. Like, what is it that you want to bring to medicine? What is your special sauce? What is your love of medicine? And how do you really build around that instead of around corporate policies? There's also the idea of a career that really grows instead of plateauing. There's always something new to learn in medicine, but as you expand into practice ownership, you start to really be able to, instead of having a very narrow focus on medicine, you can expand to, I want to learn about, marketing or systems or operations or all these different things that you can really start to continue to grow and build as high as you want. And then it can also be an asset that you own, not just a job you work. I own my practice. If I want to sell it at some point, I can. And that provides a legacy that's just different than when you work for somebody else. So in 2026, what are we looking at? At this point, all states have some form of PA or NP practice ownership. It's different state to state, but there is a way in every state for a PA or nurse practitioner to own a practice. We really see that cash pay and hybrid models, and by hybrid, I mean some cash pay and a few select insurances instead of, taking all the insurances, are really becoming mainstream. Patients expect this. Patients have started to see their deductibles get so high that they're willing to cash pay in order to get into providers. Also, the cash pay, we see patients expecting concierge medicine, direct care. Patients are expecting that and are a lot more open to that than they may have been 10, 15 years ago, which is great for practice owners. Physician collaboration is becoming more accessible than ever. That's one that a lot of people feel like is really going to be a roadblock. But what we know and what we've seen with the clients that we work with starting their practices is that there are a lot of physicians who are realizing what a lucrative and even fulfilling role it can be to help PAs, nurse practitioners, start and grow their practices. And so physicians are starting to see this as a way to broaden their reach and their impact in medicine, but also as an additional revenue stream, which is a really good one, which is awesome. We're seeing a rising demand for specialty, functional, longevity care. So some of these areas that patients are really wanting, especially with social media, we're getting so much more exposure as lay people and as patients to various things that medicine can do. And patients want that. And sometimes we are the exact solution that they're looking for. And then practice ownership continues to offer significant tax and operational advantages. You can really save a lot of money above what you're making by owning a practice on your taxes there, which is great. So we're seeing again these patients are more open to these niche and direct pay models. We have lean startup models, make it really easy to launch without a heavy overhead. That was something that was really important to me when I started my practice. I did not want to risk my family's finances to start a practice. That just was never going to be an option. But in 2019, and this was even pre-COVID, technology and the option for virtual medicine made the entry cost low enough that even my very frugal self felt like, okay, this is something that we can do. We're seeing demand really growing among patients for the type of care we can offer. We've got virtual care, streamlined tech where patients can self-schedule and, send messages without necessarily the need for a lot of administrative staff. And then all the cool automations that we've got have really made the idea of being a one-person shop very accessible. Again, when I started, I did not want to spend money on an assistant early on. Some people do, they want to do that right out the gate. I did not. That was a big barrier to me. But once the technology got to the point where it's like, we don't really have to have an assistant, then it felt accessible. And things have gotten, even from 2019, the tech has gotten so much better, so much more affordable, and so much more robust that it's an even better time now. And then in 2026, we're seeing practice ownership still having that income potential and becoming a long-term asset. So, why do some practices thrive? Like, what makes a really solid practitioner-owned practice? The cash pay and hybrid models. And again, we have people who do the full insurance, but really the cash pay and hybrid models reduce the insurance burden and again make that entry very easy for folks. We're seeing the increasing insurance coverage is advantageous. We've got that high patient demand, and there's not necessarily a lot of provider competition in some of the spaces where we help people. We've got to align our services with our PA and nurse practitioner scope and training. And then we want to have a scalable option, which may look like virtual visits or concierge models. Sorry, we've already gone over this one. Am I going backwards? I'm going backwards. Sorry about that. All right. So, with CPAC, we've worked with over 30 clients to start their own practices over the last year or two. We've worked with practices in a wide variety of states. We've worked with some of the more liberal, easy to start states like Idaho, which is a really easy state to start in. Iowa is another easy state. But we've also done more cumbersome states like Alabama, California, Pennsylvania, Texas. We've worked with providers in those states and had success. We've been able to get people open there. So at this point, we've been able to get all of the providers that we worked with up and going in some fashion. What specialties have we worked with? I mean, there's really no limit to what a PA nurse practitioner can own, but there are some specialties that are definitely well suited for that. So psychiatry has been one that we've worked with a ton of clients with, primary care. Dermatology, especially if it's lower procedure dermatology, can be um, a very good one. Women's health, especially with a lot of the focus lately on menopause and perimenopause, there's great room for growth in women's health, and we've had practitioners that have done great there. Pediatrics, and we'll see a case study later on. Longevity medicine, men's health. We've helped aesthetics and med spas, sleep medicine, lipidology. There was a practice that combined both of those in a really interesting way that was great. Obesity management, gender affirming care. We've helped people with hormone therapy. The clinic that started in pediatrics also offered lactation consulting, which was really cool combo there. And then integrative medicine has been one that we've worked with a lot of different providers in. So, kind of what are the steps there? So, from the idea to like actually having a practice, I mean, there's a lot of steps, but we can break it down into some simple ideas. We definitely want to form a compliant business entity. We've got to have things legally and corporately sound so that you're operating on the up and up. We're not going to get in trouble with the Secretary of State or the IRS. You know, we want everything legit from an entity standpoint. We also need to have a profitable business model. Now, I did not get into this a practice ownership because I wanted to make loads and loads of money. I wanted to schedule and medicine that I was going to love. The income has been a nice benefit, but even for folks who like money may not be their primary objective, we still have to be profitable, right? If you're not profitable, you're not going to stay open and you're not going to be able to serve clients. So we always want to have that at the forefront of like, how is this going to be set up in a way that's financially viable long term? We need a repeatable patient acquisition plan. And so that's our marketing. How are we letting people know that you're there, letting them know that you offer services they want and actually getting them into the door? And we can do that in a lot of different ways. I'm sure you could think of 10 different things to get patients in your door right now. But we need a plan that's going to make sense for your ideal client and make sense for you as a person. I hate social media. It is just not my thing. It doesn't make sense to me. So I don't do it. I have other patient acquisition channels that work much better for me. So we want to make sure that we've got that situated and repeatable so that we've got a steady flow of clients. We also want systems for daily operations that are scalable. We've got to have things simple enough, straightforward enough, and working well enough that we can continue to grow, that we're not being bogged down by these administrative things, and that our patients, because of those daily operations, are getting good frictionless patient care that feels good to them so that we keep them and also that they share. From there, we're going to track our metrics. We're going to adjust our strategy and optimize performance. Now, there are a million different things you could track in a practice. So we want to find the metrics that are most important, track those, and then adjust so that we can see what's working, what's not, and do more of what's working and less of what's not, so that we can really optimize performance and move the business and your life in the direction that you want it to go. So for me, practice ownership has really meant flexibility and freedom. So in 2019, this was even pre-COVID, I started White Pine, which is my telepsychiatry practice, um, a lot because I needed that flexibility for my family that I mentioned before. I also needed autonomy to practice medicine aligned with my values. When I was working for another clinic, I just was not able to do that. I couldn't see my patients at the frequency that I wanted to. I wouldn't have I'd have a patient in crisis and couldn't get them in for 6 weeks. There was nothing I could do about it. Like I just, other than like triple book myself, which I couldn't do. Messages may not have gotten returned in the way that I needed them to or would feel good about. And so that was something that was really important to me. And it's really important to a lot of providers that I work with. Like, we got into medicine because we wanted to do it well. And owning your own practice, you can do it well, which I love. And then there's that income potential. Like, I was only able to work very little hours, so I was making very little money working for somebody else. But when I was able to set things up for the flexibility that allowed me to set my own rate and set my own hours, the income potential was opened up quite a bit. And now that I'm adding in additional providers, it really becomes unlimited. Like, how many providers do we want to add? That's how much money we can make. So today, owning my practice has allowed me to add two other PAs to the practice. I'm seeing patients in a way that feels good to me, at the frequency, with the duration, with the depth that I enjoy and works for my patients. I earn more money working, a fraction of the hours than I used to, which is amazing. It does a lot for me and for my family. I'm able to spend more time with my family. So this summer, I'm barely going to be in the office. I spend my summers at the pool playing with my kids and headed to the beach. Like, that's what we do in the summer. We really scale it back because that's what's important to me. And then I'm building a practice that, if needed, I can sell. It's an asset. Even if I decide to take time off, the practice is still making money in the background from the other providers, which is wonderful. So, we serve people who are just starting out with practice ownership, maybe even just considering it. And we also serve people who have an existing practice and are looking to streamline, grow, increase revenue. So if you're just starting out, the top questions we see from those folks are, is this legal and how? Is it legal for a PA nurse practitioner to start their own practice? And if so, how do we go about that? And it's confusing. That's not what we were trained for. I didn't know anything about this until I jumped in and decided to do it. And now I know a lot about it, which is cool. So yes, in every state there is a legal pathway. Again, some states it's much easier than others. Most states it's not terribly burdensome, which is great. There are a few states that it is a little tricky, and we need to make sure that we're compliant and thinking about that. Another question we hear often is, how do I find a supervising collaborative physician? And there's no one answer. There's a lot of different avenues for that. But so far, we have never had, in the 30 plus people that we've worked with, we've never had anybody who that's been a barrier. We've always found a physician, or they've always found a physician that can work with them. Insurance versus cash. There's, again, no right answer to this. And this is one thing that I personally love about our program, is that we don't have an answer. We really dive in with our individual clients and figure out what's going to work best for them, because there are pros and cons to each of those. Insurance, like taking all the insurances, taking no insurance, taking one or two insurances. Like, there's definitely some pros and cons there. The other cool thing about that is it can change. What you do now is not what you have to stay with forever. How do I get patients? There's a million different ways to get patients. And again, it's matching your goals, your needs, your personality, and figuring out a plan, and then that you can consistently execute, that feels good to you and gets those patients. And we're really good at that, which is nice. And then I think an important one that, honestly, we probably don't get asked as much as we should, but one that I think is super important. What must be done now to avoid costly mistakes later? How can we set things up in the best way possible from the start so that you're positioned in a place to grow and not have mistakes in the future? So what about scaling practices? So people who already own practices and want to grow or streamline, like, what are the questions that those people ask? Am I charging the right amount? I love this question, because that's an area we can really focus on and very quickly usually get people significant income in their revenue without a whole lot of work, tweaking what they're charging, how they're charging, their policies around that, and really grow their revenue pretty quickly. And the other cool thing about that is, with a little extra money, then we can really make some cool changes with marketing or systems or operations. How do I increase patient volume without burning out? How do I get more patients without burning out? Sometimes I think that's the right question, and sometimes that's really what we need. Sometimes it's like, well, is it that you need more patients? Do we need to adjust systems? Do we need to adjust, the rates that you're charging? But how do we do that without burning out? How do we set up to get you where you need to go without burning out? And it does come down to really looking at being clear on your objectives, your needs, and then breaking down the small steps that will get you there. What should I streamline, automate, or delegate next? One of the clients that we're working with in our scaling program, Practice Building Accelerator, is delegation. She's hired her first assistant. How do we set that up? How do we get that working well so that she can free up her time to either see more patients or work on the bigger picture of the practice? What metrics actually matter? I mentioned earlier there's a million different things you can track as a practice owner. Do you need to track all of them? No, you're just, we want to pick the few metrics that are really important. And again, that depends on where you're at and what your goals are. So that's one thing that we can be really helpful with is helping figure out which metrics you need to track, how, and how to adjust those. And then when or how should I grow and scale? I think a lot of I entered this saying, I will never hire another provider. That is not my intention. That is not in my game plan. But over time, it definitely became more and more something that I desired for the practice. And so we're growing and scaling. We've got two PAs now, in addition to myself. Other people come in and say, hey, I want to have a big old team. And then they realize, whoa, I can actually make a lot of money and keep things really simple just myself. And that's okay too. So again, that's one thing I love working with people is to individualize their goals and their plans. And I think as medical providers, like that's a lot of what we do naturally in our careers. So it's kind of a natural transition into that way of thinking as a practice owner. So kind of the truth to this, if we take all of those questions and distill them down, we know that practice ownership is possible and it's proven. We've done this time and time again in multiple states and multiple specialties. PAs and nurse practitioners are building and scaling real practices right now. And so it's a matter of, do you want to build a real practice right now? Because you can, if that's the right thing for you. So kind of looking at some of the people that we've worked with, we've got Rachel. Rachel is a really cool person to work with. She's a PA, had worked in pediatrics for years, and saw a specific need in her community. Kids could not go back to school until they had a note from a provider. And we all know that you don't need, your kids out for a virus. They don't need to go to the doctor over that, catch a gastroenteritis while they're there. Mom had to take off work. Like it just was a mess. And so she said, look, I'm just going to open a small virtual practice where I'm going to clear kids, maybe do a little light family practice in there so that they can go back to school. I think this will be, something my community really needs. And yes, her community very much needed this. As we kind of talked to her in working together in our practice building blueprint, we kind of clarified that, like, hey, she might want to do a little bit more than that. She might want to actually start seeing some kids for the regular pediatrics visit. And that would be doable. And she might want to see their moms as well, since they're already in there. She had a love for women's health too. And she also had a lactation consultant background. So we were able to really set up a practice that combined all of that and market it in a way that made sense. So from her idea and starting to work with us, she was actually able to see patients in 3 months. So, like, her first visit was 3 months later, which was amazing. She was in a really friendly state. And at this point, she's expanded into a physical, this started out virtual. She expanded into a physical space and now she's growing a team. I actually saw today she was looking for a new MA. So, things are really growing and doing well for her. And one of the cool things with her is she does use social media. In a very sustainable, manageable way. And the feedback that she's getting from her patients and her community has been like overwhelmingly positive. Like, man, Rachel, thanks so much for giving our community what we need. We're so glad that we can get care that feels good to us. Brittany was another PA that we worked with. She owned a derm and aesthetics practice before she came to work with us, but she really didn't have systems, paperwork, finances in place in a way that felt good to her. Like she knew things were a little chaotic. She's providing good medicine, her clients are really happy, but on the back end, things felt very messy to her. So with her, we worked together to set up a plan for sustainable growth and scaling that felt good to her and was going to feel good for her clients. And so she's been able to continue to grow her practice. So for you, what are your next steps? So, you're here on our webinar because practice ownership is interesting to you. What next? So if you have not started a practice yet, or not seeing clients yet, patients, we've got the practice building blueprint. This is for PAs and nurse practitioners, even physicians really, who are starting a new practice. It's a 6-month structured support program. So we are there with you every step of the way for 6 months as you kind of build up your practice. The foundation of this is our step-by-step guides. You get 6 modules, and we'll kind of look at those in a minute, that walk you through every single step with little check boxes and links and little fill in the blanks so that you can very quickly bust out what, when I was trying to figure it out from scratch, took me like 6 weeks to get done. You can probably bust that out in a solid day, easy. Just sit down and get it done. That piece of, that block, and then you move on to the next block and bust those things out. um, we also have, with that, you get a one-on-one consult with me where we'll really get into your practice idea so that I make sure that I understand, we've kind of clarified any specific questions that you have, so that when you come to the group calls, we can really make some headway there. So the group calls are twice a month, and everybody who's in the practice building blueprint shows up. We kind of set goals, share where we're at, answer questions, so that your next couple of weeks until the next meeting, you know what you're working on and you've got some accountability and clarity there. It's a really cool time because the people in that group are in the same space, in the same stage as you are, and they're like-minded people. And really, I'm kind of there as a facilitator. I know a lot of things. I don't know everything. There may be another PA, nurse practitioner, in that group who can answer something. And that happens all the time. Right now, we've got like 2 PAs in Florida that are starting telepsych practices. So it's been really cool to see how they can kind of share, oh, I talked to so-and-so the other day. They're a great resource. The goal here is really to get your practice open in 90 to 120 days. We want you seeing patients as quickly as possible, because that's really where the magic starts to happen. From actually seeing patients is when you can refine your systems, refine your marketing, your pricing, and really start to move forward. So we want to do that as quickly as possible. So this is really for PAs and nurse practitioners who value structure, speed, and accountability. There is nothing in this material that you can't find somewhere else. I'm not going to tell you that we have some secret in there, but it is laid out very clearly, very succinctly, and we're here to help you stay on track and kind of get out of some of the overthinking or the confusion that is very easy to get into at this stage. So, and we do a good job at it. We've got the results that say this works, which is awesome. So this is for clinicians who are ready to launch. If you're still kind of wondering if practice ownership is right for you, Katie can talk to you about some other options. But like if you're ready to start a practice, practice building blueprint is the thing. It's for those who value structure and accountability. I mean, I'm not like, I've got a list and I'm going to give demerits or anything, but that little question of, okay, what are you working on in the next 2 weeks? And then knowing that in 2 weeks, somebody's going to ask, well, how did you do on the goal that week? Okay, you didn't do it, or you did it, and we'll celebrate. If you didn't, why not? What can we do to help that in the next couple of weeks? It's for providers who maybe have a vision, but maybe not the clear roadmap. And honestly, none of us have a clear roadmap because this is not necessarily what we do. But as the experts in practice ownership, we can provide you a blueprint. It's for providers who want to build their practices with a proven formula. You don't want to guess at things. You don't want to risk getting things wrong, making costly mistakes. We're here for you. And it's anybody who maybe has even already tried this. Maybe you've already kind of gotten into the process, but you're feeling frustrated, feel like you're spinning your wheels, or just kind of feel lonely. Like we're here. So our modules, I mentioned 6 modules. The first module, we go through your goals and your vision, because there is no sense in building a practice that doesn't serve you well. In that second module, we get into the legal and the business setup. We want to make sure things are set up well. In module 3, we talk about finances and fees. Like, what do we need to do to make this work from a financial perspective, with the idea of longevity? And then module 4 is systems and operations. What phone system do you need? What EHR? We provide lots of options and kind of help match that to your needs. Module 5 is a whopper of a module, and it's on branding and marketing. We walk through everything from your practice name, picking colors, fonts, photos, and I have videos that walk you through creating your own website. And then module 6 is sustainability and growth. Like, where do you go from here, and how do we make this work for you long term? So our alumni from this program have reached 200,000 or more personal take home with 18 months of opening, which was a great success story that we'd love to see. We've had practitioners launch with less than $5,000 in startup costs. We've filled schedules within the first 60 to 90 days even. We've had people that decide they work school-friendly hours while keeping a full practice. We've had providers that have been able to hire their other staff within 1 to 2 years. And then we've had people that have expanded services or crossed state lines within months, not years. Now, it's not everybody hasn't done all of this, but we have had that level of success with our clients. It's been really exciting to see. So, what if you already own a practice? How do you take that to the next level? Well, we've got the practice building accelerator. So again, this is for people who already have a practice that's seeing patients. They're ready to grow beyond the startup phase. They're providers who really want to scale sustainably. That's really a focus of ours. We're not about quick bursts, short term crazy promises. We're about a program that's going to last long term. We want to work with owners who have a clear vision and need support executing it. People who need that strategic guidance, some systems and growth in there. And maybe if you already have a practice that has a lot of effort and maybe feels heavy, that we can set it up in a way that feels lighter and easier to scale. So, topics that we cover in the Practice Building Accelerator: how to maximize that revenue, how to hire and fire and manage your staff, how to scale while maintaining that ease and ability. We talk a lot about strategic marketing. We talk about time management. We have guest experts and talk a lot about goal setting. So Denise is kind of our last case study because she's been with us through the whole journey. So she was a psychiatric PA who really wanted flexibility and income growth. So she started out in our PBB, the Practice Building Blueprint, and she built a practice where she was able to replace her full-time salary within a year. And she was seeing 5 to 12 patients 4 days a week and traveling. And all of that felt so much better to her than her previous job. So she's making more money. She's enjoying her schedule, and feeling a lot better there. Once she kind of got to that level, she moved over to PBA, or Practice Building Accelerator, and we've really been able to work with her to increase her revenue. We were able to make some very small tweaks that resulted in some very big income growth there, without her seeing any additional patients, which has been great. We've helped her to simplify operations, hire and manage a virtual assistant, and creating a growth strategy. And now she's looking for hiring a new provider. So, bottom line to all of this, all 50 states allow PA nurse practitioner practice ownership, and 2026 so far, and since I've been in this, is the best and easiest year yet, which is great. So, if you're interested, you can schedule a discovery call. Katie will reach out about that. You can also just on our website sign up for PBB or PBA, and then become your own boss with our support. So Katie has her email, our website. She also is totally open to you texting her. So don't think that's going to be a bother. It goes to an app where she's able to check that, because we know that, everybody texting is the most convenient way to communicate these days. So don't hesitate to reach out to Katie with any questions, to schedule a discovery call, sign up for the program, whatever you need. Katie's got you covered.